Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let's code together. Today we are diving into one of the most versatile design patterns, the strategy design pattern. If you are looking to understand how to make your code more flexible and maintainable, you are in the right place. So let's get started. The strategy design pattern is a behavioral design pattern that enables an algorithm's behavior to be selected at runtime. So what does that mean? If we are performing some operation and we have multiple ways to do that, using this pattern we can decide this dynamically what method to be used for that specific operation. So it defines a family of algorithms, encapsulates each one and makes them interchangeable. So in this diagram you can see we have multiple algorithms, right? And client code can decide at runtime dynamically so which algorithm to be used for that specific operation. For example, client code has an array of elements and client wants to sort them, right? Using strategy pattern, client can decide at runtime which sorting algorithm to be used for sorting. So we can have quick sort, we can have merge sort, we can have bubble sort. So at runtime, this can be decided using strategy design pattern. So let's consider a real world example, a payment system for an online store. We have different payment methods such as credit card, debit card, Paytm, and each payment method has its own processing algorithm. So by using the strategy pattern, we can encapsulate each payment method as a separate strategy. You can see for payment method Paytm, so we have Paytm strategy, right? Similarly, for debit card payment method, we have debit card strategy. And similarly, we have credit card strategy for credit card payment method. Payment context can easily switch between different payment methods without altering the code. So the core purpose of strategy design pattern is like in client code, if we want to provide a common interface where we don't want to overburden the client with understanding of various algorithms, but we want to provide a simple interface to the client code which can be used to process any kind of payment, either it is Paytm payment or debit card or credit card. We will be trying to understand this design pattern practically, but before that, let's discuss the core components of this design pattern. So the first component is strategy interface. The strategy interface declares a method that all concrete strategies must implement. It represents the family of algorithms that can be used interchangeably. The second component is concrete strategy. So concrete strategy class implements the strategy interface, providing specific implementation for the algorithms. Actually, the algorithms are encapsulated under this concrete strategy classes. This is the implementation of strategy interface. We are using the interface because we want to provide a common name to this context from where these strategy classes will be called. So this is the basic OOPS concept, just to provide a common way to access the different concrete classes. So another component is context. It interacts with a strategy object to execute the algorithm, right? So the context component always contains the reference of strategy. So by using the reference of strategy, so we can further execute the algorithm. So the last component is client. So the client is the entity that sets the desired strategy and indicates operations using the context. So all this pattern will be initiated in the client code. So let's jump into the code and try to understand how we can implement strategy design pattern in our projects. So let's create our first component, that is strategy interface. So we have payment strategy. So this is the interface and we have a method void pay. It will be accepting one amount variable. So next we need to create the concrete strategy classes or concrete payment strategies. Here the first class is debit card. So let's implement this class from payment strategy. And we need to override the method. Here we have property card number. Let me create the constructor to initialize this property, and inside this payment strategy, so we have this method where we need to implement the specific algorithm, right? For the time being, we are just printing, so paying amount using debit card, right? So this is our first strategy, that is debit card. So let's create our next strategy class. So that is credit card implements payment strategy, and we need to override the pay method. Here also we have property card number, and let's create constructor to initialize. In this pay method, so we will be writing the proper algorithm to process the payment using credit card, but we are just learning the pattern. So here we are using the print statement, so paying amount using credit card, right? Next to this, we can create another concrete class for this payment strategy. Let's create Paytm implements payment strategy. So we need to override the pay method. We have property phone number, let's initialize this, and finally in pay method, so let's print paying amount using Paytm. So as per this component diagram, so we have created the strategy interface, and we have created 3 concrete strategy classes. So next we will be creating the context class. So let's create the class. Let's call it payment context. So here in this diagram you can see, so context and strategy contains has a relation. So context will be having strategy object. So property payment strategy, right? Let's initialize this through constructor, and we have method here public void execute payment. So this is the method where client will be interacting, and we are passing amount here, and finally we will be calling the pay method from the strategy classes. So using this reference we can call pay, and we are passing the amount. So in this method we will be using the strategy reference to call or to execute the appropriate algorithm, right? So because each strategy contains this pay method, so whatever the reference we will be passing in this payment strategy, so respective pay method will be called. So finally let's create the client code. So we have main method here. The first thing we have payment strategy equals to new debit card, right? And we need to pass some number here. And another thing we require is payment context. So context is payment context, and we have passed the strategy which is debit card, right? So in payment context, so we are accepting one strategy, right? So in this example or in this piece of code, so the strategy is debit card, right? So let's call the right algorithm to process the payment using debit card, or as per our design pattern. So what we will be doing, so context dot execute payment, and for example we are passing some amount. So as we have passed the debit card as strategy, so this payment will be processed using the debit card. So let me run this. So you can see paying amount 1000 using debit card. At some point, so if we want to change the payment strategy, right? So for example, strategy equals to new credit card. Let's create new context, and we are passing the strategy which is credit card now. And if I call context dot execute payment 2000, here we can do one thing. I'm just adding one line separator. So first we created strategy for debit card, and the payment was processed using debit card, right? And now we have created credit card strategy, and when we are calling the execute payment method of context, so the payment will be processed using credit card. So I am running this, so you can see the latest output, that is paying amount using credit card. And similarly we want to use Paytm strategy equals to new Paytm strategy, and it accepts phone number. And let's create context using this strategy, and finally call context dot execute payment, so which will be ultimately calling the pay method under Paytm strategy. So let me run the program. So you can see the latest output, which is paying amount 3000 using Paytm. So in client code, so you can see we have decided so which strategy we need to apply to execute the payment. So let's have a quick review. So first we need to have one interface for strategies, right? And the second, we implemented our strategy classes for credit card, debit card, and Paytm. And then we need to create the context which will be containing the strategy object, and as per the underlying implementation of this payment strategy, we will be calling the pay method, right? And in the main method, so we have created various strategies at various levels at runtime, and finally we called the execute payment of our context class, which is ultimately calling the pay method from the strategy. That's it for today's video on strategy design pattern. I hope this helps you understand how to apply this pattern in your own projects. If you have any question or comments, feel free to leave them in below comments. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content on coding and design patterns. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on Let's Code Together.